Hello and welcome to the Claret Blue podcast, sponsored by NordVPN. If you want the best discount code available for that, there's a link in the description down below. I'm your host for this one, Dan Rolinson, joined by Mat Kendrick. Matt, did you sleep last night? Were you still buzzing off the adrenaline of qualifying for the top four?
Been a bit of a nightmare actually. Last night and Monday night, I've hardly had any sleep just because of the excitement. I've struggled to come back down and relax after those highs, and I feel my son's had two GCSE exams as well in the last couple of days, so he's just been, I don't know, he's just dragged himself out of bed and gone to school. So we'll find out. We'll find out in August what damage Villa's Champions League qualification's done to my son's prospects. Anyway,
yeah, I've not slept well myself, but we're here today again to talk about Aston Villa. This is our Q&A episode. We'll get straight into it because I don't think we've got massive amounts of time today. David says, what do you think the challenge from Unai Emery will be for next season, and what is the ceiling for this team? It's kind of almost heading into pre-season predictions territory, isn't it? But what is the aim for next year, do you think, roughly?
Typical modern day football fans, David. Just enjoy. It's very much a kind of, it is a very Unai Emery thing. All right, that's done. Forget all about that. Let's crack on. I think in terms of what he will demand and expect, I think the minimum will be to qualify for the Champions League again.
Do you think?
So that we're not a one-season wonder. So to do that, you've got to stay in and around the top four again and combine those dual pressures of, like say, a fantastic Champions League challenge in terms of the actual competition and be competitive in the Premier League, which just shows that there's surgery going to be needed for that squad, because we've just about done it. I'm not saying we don't deserve to have done it, because we absolutely do. I suppose you say if we'd done it with a game to spare, we haven't just about done it. We've done it with a little bit of leeway as well. But it hasn't been straightforward, has it? Certainly in the last couple of months.
Home, have we?
No, you've felt us creak in the last couple of months. So I think that'll be his priority, making sure that we're super competitive in the Premier League and people don't accuse us of being a kind of one-season wonder and a fluke. Obviously, he's going to give it loads, isn't he, in terms of when we're in the Champions League, to be as competitive as we can there. Old-fashioned me still wants us to try and get a piece of silverware sooner rather than later, but I think Emery's will be finishing top four again.
Yeah, I totally agree. I almost wanted to kind of go, top four again next year, and whether that's almost overly ambitious. But I suppose the flip side is that if we're almost, enjoy the Champions League, it is what it is, but we're maybe not expecting to go as far in it as we were with the Conference League, and we managed those demands pretty well. So I think John said that even if you were to go out in the first kind of phase of it, that after those 8 games, that's probably all wrapped up by January, February. So you've still got like a good chunk of the Premier League season to, if you were 6th, to really put an attack on the top 4 as well. So,
and the FA Cup.
And the FA Cup, yeah, absolutely. And I expect that 5th place will probably be enough for the Champions League next season, because you would think that the English clubs are going to do better next year.
We're going to win it, you mean?
Well, yeah, we can help ourselves, yeah, of course. So to finish in the top 5, if that is Champions League, I think that would be, that should be the target. And again, if we are consistently in the Champions League year on year, that is an unbelievable achievement, and hopefully we can go on to do that.
I don't think there is a ceiling at the moment. I think we've smashed through one of the toughest ceilings in next to no time under Unai Emery. So I think just kind of dare to dream that we can go on and properly compete, that we can win titles, that we can win European competitions, we can win silverware. Now, it's a big difference between dreaming it and actually achieving it, but I don't think there needs to be a ceiling, certainly to our ambition.
Totally agree. I mean, we did an episode just a couple of weeks ago about, can Villa win the Premier League one day? So the conclusion to that was, why not? So, yeah, no ceiling whatsoever. Second question then from Jay, who says, a number of players promised Champions League and have delivered beautifully. Is there anything you have previously promised but failed to deliver on?
Is this a unicycle-related question?
I would assume so, yes.
Listen, my kids would probably say there's lots of things that I've promised that I haven't delivered on. And my son was nagging me forever to book a hotel and flight in Athens, so I never delivered on that, fortunately. So I'll tell Claret Blue listeners and viewers what I'll tell him. Daddy knows best, okay? So in terms of the unicycle, I promised that I would try. I admitted I've only tried for 10 minutes and then been scared of the future safety of my scrotum. But I haven't given up completely. So let's just ... and see what happens with that.
Okay. In terms of the podcast, I wanted to do like a proper kind of documentary piece this season. That was one of our goals at the back end of last year, and I have failed to deliver that. We didn't get round to doing that. We always say we'll try and get some more interviews, bring up David Platt. We haven't done that. So there is things that we failed to deliver upon, but we're doing our best. Right, on to the Champions League itself then. There's a couple of questions here that we'll blast out in one go. From David, first of all, a different David, who says, how do the pots work in the Champions League? Do we play teams from England, or are they excluded from being able to play against us? I did an audio-only show, I don't know, 6 weeks ago or something, talking about how the structure of the Champions League will be next year. We are going to do a YouTube version of that. I think we're going to record it next week and post it whenever, how this league phase works. We'll talk about it in a sec as well from another question. I've been a quick Google this morning. I think you can play against English sides in that league phase because we've got multiple teams from the nation. If you were a team where there was only 2 of you, for example, I don't think you could go against each other. But because there's 4 for England and potentially 5 in the future, I think if you had to avoid playing those English sides, it's going to mess up the kind of format, I think. So I think, yes, you can. In the knockout phases, obviously, you can be drawn against a fellow English side, of course. But the pot's an interesting one. I've not looked into this enough yet. I don't know what the advantage is to being in pot 1. Because if you play 2 teams from each pot, doesn't really matter, does it, whether you're pot 1 or pot 4? So there must be an advantage somewhere, whether you're at home first or something. There's got to be something, surely.
I'm probably the worst person to ask about this. Should have got John on. I haven't dared to look at any of it. Dan, to be honest, I'm waiting for your explainer to drop again.
If you are an audio person, you always listen, and there is an episode called something like Explained, what does the new look Champions League look like? If you want to go back and listen to that, all the information is in there. But for the YouTube audience, as I say, we will record a fresh version of that, hopefully next week, and it'll be out. At some point, me and John will go through it properly. And because there must be an advantage to being in pot 1 rather than pot 4. But it's not like the olden days, is it, where you played all the other pots, and if you're in the higher pot, you get an easier group because you play 2 from each now. I don't know what the benefit is, so that's interesting. James asks, is there any chance that we make the knockout stage? To get past this league phase, Matt, the top 8 go directly into the round of 16. If you finish 9th to 24th in this league out of 36, you play a playoff against each other. So from 9th to 24th, you play each other. The winner of that goes into the knockouts. I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility that Villa finish at least 24th in this group phase, and then you've got a one-off game or a 2-legged game, I'm not sure, to kind of progress yourself into the first knockout phase against one of the boys that finish at the top.
I think we've got to believe we've got a chance. I know as Premier League football fans, we probably have delusions of grandeur thinking that our league, he's better than everybody else's. But Unai Emery doesn't. I don't know what he'd be like with his own kids, because I don't think he subscribes to the theory that it's the taking part that counts, does he, Unai Emery? He's super competitive. As much as I've said that he'll be concentrating on making sure we finish high up the Premier League again, he's not want to go into this competition and be embarrassed. I think we've got to, I don't think it's quite as bold a prediction as yours last summer, Dan, when you said we'd finish in the top 4, which was, I felt, kind of ludicrously ambitious. But I do think we will get through to the knockout stages.
Me too.
Obviously, it's draw dependent, isn't it? And it's who we end up playing. But I think, and it's also dependent on the strengthening that we do over the summer. But I think we've got a chance. I think we want to go in there and be competitive. And I think the fact we've had a year of European football to almost help us become streetwise, which is an advantage that Newcastle didn't have, because they went straight into the biggest prize, if you like. I think that will count in our favour. So yeah, I'll put my neck on the line and I think we'll get through to the knockout stage. Yeah, very, very exciting, and we should all be very much looking forward to it, as I'm sure everyone is. CB82 says, if you look at the projected Champions League pots, what is your dream draw with 2 from each pot? Now, I don't have it in front of me, but I've seen this projected thing quite a lot, and obviously it changes if teams drop out on the final day or whatever. So again, I think that is probably something we will look at in the coming weeks when it is all finalised of who is actually in it. If it was the old format, would you have wanted what Newcastle had, where you play 3 of the big guys, or would you rather have an easier group and not have the flashy away days but get through? Doesn't matter now, but I'd probably rather get the easy ones out of the way first and stay in it, because if you stay in it, you've got more chance of playing the prestige kind of showpiece ties as well, haven't you? So I'd have done it that way. I just want you do want one of the real big boys, don't you, down at Villa Park? And you want one of the, you've probably being greedy as well, but you want to visit some kind of fantastic stadiums as well. I don't know whether I'll be able to get tickets, but I would love to do a Champions League away. I've not been able to do any of the Conference League aways. So my lad will have finished school, so it's easier to get him out of college. Probably shouldn't say this because he's got to get into college first. I was excited about the prospect of European football at Villa Park, but I'm extra excited now because I think just even if you just won, just go away and see Villa in Europe as a fan just once. That's the dream now for me, selfishly.
Yeah. So you play 8 teams in this first group. You don't play both home and away, so you could play Real Madrid at home but not play them away. You play 8 different teams, either home or away, 4 at home, 4 away. I've got the projected pots in front of me, and as I said, this could change. Only 21 of the 36 are actually confirmed. The equivalent of the group of death is getting the 2 most difficult teams from each pot, I suppose. So based off coefficient, that would be Man City and Bayern Munich from pot 1. Man City would be rubbish, wouldn't it? As you play, a fellow Premier League team is not quite the.
At least we know we can beat them at Villa Park, though.
That is true, absolutely. Pot 2 would be Bayer Leverkusen and Atletico Madrid. Pot 3 would be Feyenoord and Sporting Lisbon, and pot 4 would be Galatasaray and Monaco. So 8 good teams there. If you're just going off coefficient, the flip side of that, Leipzig and Barcelona are the lowest in pot 1. Shakhtar Donetsk and AC Milan in pot 2. Maccabi Tel Aviv and Celtic, which would be interesting, in pot 3, and Sturm Graz and AEK Athens in pot 4. So that's kind of the easiest route, if you like, of playing 2 from each based off the projected pot. So either way, we're going to be playing some flashy ties, and even if pot 2, 3 and 4 don't go your way in terms of a big side, anyone in pot 1, Inter, Liverpool, PSG, Real Madrid, there's some big tasty games in there. One of those could be away from home, like Villa going to Real Madrid. Unbelievable. It's still, I have to kind of pinch myself that we did it. It's not quite sunk in for me yet, this whole Champions League thing, as much as we've been talking about it for weeks and weeks.
Thing is, Dan, as much as we're told, and I'm a little bit too young to have witnessed us win the European Cup, and I was 4 years old and 1 day old. As much as we're told, and our history tells us that we believe that we're this kind of big traditional club, in terms of living it and experiencing it, this feels like on a different scale now. It feels like we've arrived. So, yeah, like I said earlier, you want some games that you think you've got a prospect of winning, but you also want to meet some of the kind of giants of European football as well, don't you? To test yourself against them and to have that experience.
And just to get to finish in the top 8 of that league system is obviously going to be a tough ask when there's 8 massive teams just in pot 1 alone, and obviously it doesn't work like that. But if they're the favourites of the competition, you'd expect them to rack up wins in that league phase system. But we don't really know how it's going to work. We don't know how many points you need really to get through. It's 8 games, so there's 24 points available. Like, would 15 be enough? 5 wins and 3 defeats. Is that enough to finish even in the top 8? Is it enough to finish in the middling bit? What's the lowest points that you can get through to this playoff round? Like 3 wins, 5 defeats. Would that be enough? Like we don't know, do we? And having this kind of unknown, exciting change to the competition makes it exciting. I know a lot of people don't like this new format, but it being fresh and being different just gives me this weird kind of hope of, well, maybe we could do something then.
Yeah, I like the fact that we've arrived when it's had a bit of a refresh. Really, it does all that. Does sound like a separate kind of Daniel Rolinson permutations podcast. So you need to be reading through all that. Where did you get all the last info from? Do they have like a big set of like 400 PDFs that give you all the details?
Yeah, there's like a rules page on the UEFA website, and it looks unnecessarily complicated to begin with. But the more you read about it, you kind of go, oh yeah, you play everybody twice. Some are home, some are away. And then if you get through playoffs, it's normal as we know it, quarterfinals, semis, etc. So, yeah, I think we kind of feel like we've got into it at the right time, just because of that unknown factor of, well, maybe 3 wins in that league phase is enough to scrape through, and then you get a playoff against Celtic or something. You go, I fancy us in that, and all of a sudden you find yourself in, what is the first one? Is it the last 16? It is last 16, yeah, because the top 8 go through and then another 8 go through. So yeah, if you get through the playoff, all of a sudden you're in the last 16, and from that stage, who knows? So very, very exciting. Right, next question from the Dr. Mills, who says, what would you say were the 2 most important wins that we got this season? Mine were the Crystal Palace comeback and the Arsenal away win. Arsenal away definitely feels like a big one. I know it's happened fairly recently, but I think I'd agree with that one.
I think it depends how you look at it. I mean, the back-to-back wins over Man City and Arsenal that week, I think, were important in the sense that I think they gave the squad the confidence to think, well, yeah, we're not here by chance. We can actually compete. I think the big ones that I remember, and it might have been around the time where, I think it'd been around the time we probably lost to Man United and Newcastle at home. And we've got Kamara injured. And the squad was starting to creak with injuries, suspensions, etc., etc. We've gone and won at Luton, completely out the blue. Luca Dean scored a last-minute winner. I think that was really, really significant. And we won away at Fulham as well, and I think that was really significant. So, yeah. I don't know. We were talking last night about the point at West Ham and the point against Chelsea. I think every time we've picked up points has obviously contributed towards it. Go back way back to the start of the season when we've lost at home. We've been battered away at Newcastle. Everybody's doom and gloom, and then we turn up at Villa Park and we sweep Everton aside, and we think, well, actually, Unai knows best. Don't worry about it. The Palace. I'm going to say every single result now here on the Palace one that the listener viewer has just flagged up. I think that came after. Did we lose at Liverpool, and that was a heavy-ish defeat? We conceded 3 at Liverpool, and we bounced back against Palace, despite it being a bit of a battle. So I've said all 38 games yet.
I'm just looking through the fixed list as you speak, and you kind of go, lost to Liverpool, bounced back against Palace, great result. Then we beat Chelsea and beat Brighton consecutively straight after that. The three that you just mentioned there, after losing to Newcastle and Man United, has Sheffield United away in the middle of those. Go away to Fulham and win, then Forest, then Luton. 3 games that you look at as Villa being winnable on paper, but to actually go and do it and get 9 points in a short amount of time is kind of the makings of a good side, if you like. The Arsenal one away definitely feels like something to me. I would say Bournemouth as another one as well at home just a couple of weeks ago. And I know I'm picking recent ones, but having the Lille game and then that Bournemouth game so close to each other and doing Arsenal, Lille and Bournemouth in the space of a week or so, that was kind of like the last big effort, the last big energy to kind of seal a massive 3 points. So they're all important. Every single point that we've got is important, but the Bournemouth game was our last win as it stands. So that was kind of the last kind of push, if you like.
Consecutively, okay?
Yeah, thank you. Consecutively. Having said that, though, I saw people talking about like Spurs is running and hours and kind of like, Villa have fallen off and Villa fell off a cliff and whatever else. The last 5 results, beating Arsenal and beating Bournemouth, a draw at Chelsea, a defeat against Brighton and a draw against Liverpool. Obviously it's not the best results ever, and it did feel like we're kind of just creeping over the line. But if you look at Spurs' last 5 or 6 results, they've lost 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 or whatever it is now. So they absolutely had the opportunity to go and do something here and really probably should have capitalised upon it, but didn't. And Villa did just about do enough, and obviously we're massively grateful that is how it played out. But those results there, draw against Liverpool and Palace, they're not Chelsea, sorry, not bad results. It's just that we just gave everything, and that's why that Bournemouth one feels important to me. Is like that last push.
Yeah, like those results in any other season,
Yeah.
The times that Chelsea and Liverpool have come to Villa Park and beaten us. But I think when you're a fan of a certain club and you're in the eye of the storm, it always feels worse, doesn't it? You always feel like your collapse is worse. You always feel like your rivals have got an easier fixture list. I think we negotiate. It's easy to say now, the benefit of hindsight, now that Manchester City have finally seen off Spurs for us. But I think given the challenges that Emery's had in terms of getting a competitive team and 2 or 3 subs who can make a difference each game, yeah. I think we've negotiated it quite brilliantly, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Question here that, again, probably is not the right time for this one. Darren says, Aston Villa will make their UEFA Youth League debut in 24-25. Hopefully that means less players will go out on loan. Me and John probably are going to do an episode about the squad. Today you might do it as well. Kind of like assessing the squad that we've got, who stays, who goes, that kind of thing. The youth setup and the makeup of what we'll have next season will be interesting. With that youth league thing, I don't really know too much about it, to be honest, but you would expect that's us testing ourselves against kind of elite European opposition, different setups and whatnot. So that is an opportunity for more youngsters to get game time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about it either. Is it like the new kind of equivalent to the Next Gen series that Villa won, Grealish and Co won way back when? I think he's all good for development. You know, if we want our first team to be playing in Europe as a kind of permanent fixture for the next 10 years and beyond, then having players who have got educated in what that takes as well, I think is really useful and really important. You know, we've got a few decent players bubbling under, haven't we? You know, we've said before that Unai Emery wouldn't put you on the bench, certainly wouldn't put you on the pitch if you're nowhere near the mark. And the fact that, you know, particularly in recent weeks, some of those youngsters have got more, even if it's kind of match day experience, even if they haven't got on, suggests that we've got some quality in there. And, you know, I don't want to get too deep into talking about Villa and Bodymore, Heath, and the academy system, but we have got a proud record of developing good players, and not always good players who are good enough to play for Aston Villa's first team. Certainly not always good enough to play for Aston Villa's first team, top 4 of the Premier League and in the Champions League. But we've got a brilliant record of bringing through players so that the academy can pay for itself. So it's always that tipping point, Dan. You know how, you know, the Cameron Archer was the one, wasn't it? You know, we're all screaming for him to be involved and to be the understudy to Ollie Watkins. The decision was made that no, wasn't quite ready. I know he's played in like one of the worst ever Premier League teams in Sheffield United, probably rivaling Aston Villa 2016. So I'm not digging out Sheffield United here, but it's a real balance, isn't it? Do you keep them around the squad long enough to dip them in and out, give them 10 minutes here or there, or do you let them go and wander? I think Tim might be one of those ones who does go back on loan, because I think we'll probably strengthen again in midfield over the summer, and I think he'll find it harder. You know, Kamara will be back hopefully from injury. It's a bit of a long-winded answer to that was a rambling answer because I don't know anything about this competition that you've just mentioned.
I had a quick Google. It says British media kind of coined it as a replacement for the Next Gen series. It's basically the youth Champions League. You play group stage like it's an actual tournament. Barcelona and Chelsea have won it twice each. So, you know, it's something absolutely, if Villa went all the way and won it, would be a prestigious thing to win for the youth academy. So, yeah, definitely worth being in, of course, and it would be interesting to see how we navigate that.
I think I called it the Youth European Cup when Villa won it.
Nice. Yeah, nice. Can you hear that lawnmower, by the way?
I can't.
Okay, excellent. We will crack on then. Sam says, what was the biggest achievement? Champions League qualification or staying up with 7 points adrift with 3 games to go?
You know, newly promoted Aston Villa staying in the Premier League, is that the world's biggest achievement? A club the size of Aston Villa, having done it. If you're talking about that particular turnaround, that post-COVID turnaround, then that was a major against the odds achievement. But Champions League has been done. It's been consistent brilliance over 18 months, really, because Emery spent the first, I don't know, 2/3 of a season stamping his mark on the club and doing it quite quickly and raising the standards and changing the culture, and then delivering on that in a year with a squad that is good, is really talented, but probably wouldn't have expected to do it. So I don't want to underplay what Dean Smith did, A, in getting us up there in the first place, and B, in consolidating us there, especially when we look doomed. But I do think getting in the Champions League, it's something this club's been striving for a long, long time. So I think it would eclipse it for me.
We were largely rubbish for most of that season. We were brilliant in that little period to do it. Obviously, to get 7 points from that in the final couple of games in the season. But to qualify for the Champions League, you have to be very good for 38 games or 35, 34 games like Villa have. So yeah, obviously the bigger achievement to get in the Champions League. But an interesting point raised nonetheless. Just on that, I suppose, or as a kind of follow-on to that from Chris, who says, and this is one for you really, where does this team rank in Villa's more recent history? He's put from 1980 onwards.
Well, let's take it from 1982 onwards.
Okay.
Instead, it's the best team that we've had since we won the European Cup, without a doubt, managed by the best manager that we've had in that time. And again, you know, my mind wanders to the good old days when I'd got hair. I was a little bit slimmer and more athletic. Oh, God, those were the days. But let's look at who would have rivaled it. Now, in that time, we've had Graham Taylor's team, and we've had Ron Atkins' team who finished second in the league. So it might be a bit presumptuous or premature to say that we're better than them. But I don't think we ever had such a strong identity, a way of controlling football matches. Well, that's that's gone missing a little bit as the squad's creaked in the last couple of months. But I think that, in my mind, got to see that era. That was the first time I started watching Villa under Graham Taylor, when he got us back up at the second tier and then got us really competitive within 2 years. So that these are the ones that are going to rival it. Graham's team, Ron Atkinson's team, which again so close to winning the first Premier League title, brilliant swashbuckling team to watch. But again, if I was to put player versus player in that team, I think you'd probably have I won't go through it now, but you'd probably have a 7-4 split in favour of Emery's men who'd go in there.
Difficult to compare different eras as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And then I suppose you'd got Brian and John Gregory, who kept us super competitive as well. Obviously, Ron and Brian had the extra bonus that they could boast silverware. And then Martin O'Neill, who tried and came so close to delivering top four, but never quite got there. So the only thing, backtracking now, the only thing that would edge it away from Emery is Ron and Sir Graham Taylor were properly in the title race. So I expect that to come under Emery. I'm not saying next season, but I expect it to come within the next 5 seasons. So go and get that sorted, Unai. And silverware that Ron and Brian had were able to boast. But again, I expect that to come as well. Christ, I'm going to have a massive disappointment if we don't deliver on this, aren't I?
Next question from AVFC Vibes says, with the season that he's had, the goals, the assists, and the maturity and leadership he's showing on the pitch, where does Leon Bailey currently rank amongst the current Premier League wingers? He's probably the player that I've changed my opinion of the most since we've probably done this podcast, to be honest. That I'd massively written him off under Gerrard. Obviously, we've heard it about Bailey's interview this week about another coach came in and basically didn't really do anything, didn't even name him. I thought that was him done. I didn't think he'd be here long term. I didn't think he was good enough. I didn't think he was consistent enough. He had injury problems that he's not had this year, and it just looks like a totally different player with a different body that he didn't have before. And like I say, my opinion is done a full 180 on him now, and he's a serious talent for us.
Yeah, if he was playing for like Great Bar Falcons under 16s or something, he'd definitely get your most improved player of the year award, wouldn't he? I think it's all about numbers as well. And I haven't got the stats to hand, but do you want to go and search for them, Dan, in terms of goals and assists? He must be right up there. And it's weird because during the kind of Jack Grealish early Premier League days, we used to always think, give the ball to Jack because he's the only one who can make things happen. There's some games now, we've got a really good team who can find different ways of carving their way through opposition defences to try and create chances. But when we're struggling and we can't find those ways, it's always, in my mind, give the ball to Bailey, make him commit the fullback, and we'll get something, whether it's winning a corner, whether it's him being able to work the ball onto his left foot to get a shot away, whether it's him delivering for a teammate and creating assists. I didn't think he was capable of this after his first season. I don't know whether I thought that the rigours of the Premier League were too much for him. He got a bit of a checkered injury record, hadn't he, in his early days at Villa. But something, and why wouldn't we put it down to Super Unai Emery, because he's got the Midas touch with everything else. Something has flicked a switch in his head that's made him say, you can become my main man here, whether it's signing Moussa Diaby and putting some pressure, like properly breathing down his neck, in the sense that our previous wingers weren't able to do. I don't know, but he's truly stepped up. I do think that without a proper DM in there, without Kamara in there, I think Bailey, we know he's going to be brilliant going forward, I'm not sure. I'm not sure Ezri Konsa has had as much cover as he would have liked when he's played at right back. But again, when Bailey's causing so much havoc and doing so many brilliant things at the other end of the pitch, I suppose that's it's hard. Cause I'm probably doing him a bit of a disservice there, because I still think that he's probably still working harder defensively than he used to.
Oh, 100%.
But if Unai Emery is going to continue to get the best out of Leon Bailey, he needs to get a safety net, a proper safety net in his midfield. That means that we're not relying on Bailey so much to provide that second cover to the fullback. But that's just a minor gripe. I think he's been magnificent.
In terms of his output figures, he's got 10 goals and 9 assists this season in the Premier League. So 1 assist away from double figures in both, 19 goal contributions. Do you want to have a guess at how many goals and assists he has total for Villa?
Probably all in, he's probably got about, including this season, he's probably got about 16 goals. So he's got 9 assists, probably about 15 assists.
You ruined my segment. When I'd say these things, I'm always expecting to go much higher, and then I can go, oh, actually, he has 15 goals and 15 assists in his career.
Is that exactly what I just said?
You said 16 goals, so 1 away.
You were leading me down that path. There used to be an old freelance journalist who worked on this patch, and he was like a real tight git, and he hated spending money. And he went to cover the Olympics once, and he came back and he said, "Matt, you'll never guess how much I've paid for a bottle of Coke or something." And because he was like, I said, 12 quid. Oh, don't be so stupid. It was 5 quid.
yeah. I'll go
down that route, mate. I'm not going to fall for that trap.
I know. I was thinking if he's already got 20 this year, you might think, well, he's probably got maybe about 20 in the other 2 years combined. No, you fell for what I laid out, sadly. But yeah, very, very impressive season from Bailey, and I know Ollie Watkins won Player of the Year and Supporters Player of the Year, I think, at the awards do. Some recognition for Bailey somewhere with an award would have been lovely. Yeah,
give him Clubman.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. Okay, let's move on then. Danny says, big question in Birmingham today. Would you rather have a mystical 60,000 seater stadium in League One or have qualified for the Champions League?
Naughty, isn't it? It's really naughty of Danny. I'd rather have exactly what we've got. Why believe in unicorns when you've got like a thoroughbred horse, I suppose, really. It's that, isn't it?
We've spoken a little bit about the rivalry on the podcast in recent weeks about how much do we care about Birmingham seemingly losing every week and whatever else. And some people wanted them to go down. Some people want them actually to get promoted, and we can have the rivalry back in league matches. Not for me, thank you. Where do you stand on it? Because a lot of people last night were kind of saying, what a perfect script. Villa qualify for the Champions League in the same season that Birmingham get relegated to League One. Do you care? Are you bothered?
Not especially. I mean, like I said, we're both kind of Hales well and Rowley Regis lad, Rowley Regis and Hales Owen. So you don't tend to get many blue noses.
No, thankfully.
Round our parts, it tends to be Wolves and Albion, doesn't it? Really. I don't mind it. It bothers me. It bothers me when they beat us, which is a long time ago. It does still bother me that they've won a trophy more recently than us. But it doesn't really make much difference to my kind of day-to-day, whether they're in League One or whether they're hovering halfway up the Championship, to be honest. So it's weird. I kind of miss the derbies in the sense that we'd found a way of winning pretty much every derby in recent years. But I don't miss them because I remember when they were beating us, and I remember when it became a really kind of horrible... when they first come back into the Premier League, it was kind of a toxic, hostile environment. So I don't really miss that, to be honest. But I'm more bothered about celebrating our achievements than gloating about the challenges that they're going through.
Sounds a bit like Spurs Arsenal, doesn't it? More bothered about their rivals than themselves, which I find utterly bizarre. Dyson says, "Hi guys, tuning in from Australia. Good day, mate. I shouldn't have done it, but I've done it. If a movie was made of the last 5 or 6 years, let's call it the Championship to the Champions League, who would you have play each of the managers? Dean Smith, Steven Gerrard and Unai Emery."
I think Dean Smith would probably have to be like a really good, strong, leading Midlands actor, like Timothy Spall or somebody. I mean, he's a bit of an odd-looking...
He doesn't represent him, does he? Yeah.
Bit of an odd-looking bloke. Either him or Ashley Priest to play him with his great bar roots. Steven Gerrard, I've always thought Steven Gerrard looks a bit like. Do you remember like Plan B, the rapper?
Yeah.
Who's also I've googled him, and he's also a bit of a kind of an aspiring actor as well. So I'd get him to be played by Plan B, mainly because he's never had a Plan B before.
Oh, I was going to say, if you got a Plan B if he wasn't available.
Yeah, so I'll beat you to it. And Unai Emery, who have I banged on about him before? I've banged on about him being, is it De Niro in Raging Bull?
Yes, yeah, a younger Unai. Yeah.
It looked like, so we'd get, I think I'd get, mind you, De Niro's not. I was going to say I'd get De Niro to play the bit when he's a young. I'd get a young De Niro to play a young Emery, and then I'd probably
not really relevant to the Aston Villa story, is it? The young Unai Emery.
No, well, you don't know. Then I'd probably get Hanks to play Emery as he is now, but I'd also like a cameo from the real Emery, whether he just says good evening at the end of it, or up the Villa at the end of it.
I didn't pick an answer. I was trying to think more like the lookalike route. Like who do they look? What actors do they look like, rather than the role specifically? And Dean Smith's an interesting one. I felt there's somebody out there, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
Got a bit of ginger about him, hasn't he? So I wonder if it's one of the old, the Weasley twins. One's a Villa fan. Maybe the Villa fan, Phelps twin, because they must be knocking on a little bit now. When was Harry Potter out? About 20 years ago.
Yeah, possibly. I thought maybe a bit of a Martin Clunes figure, but his features are a little bit more over exaggerated.
He's a Villa fan as well, isn't he? The fella who's in whatever it's called, used to be the detective in Murder in Paradise, Death in Paradise.
The guy off the old BT advert.
Yeah, Chris Marshall in it or something.
They got to be Villa fans as well. Though is this where we're going with this? Yeah,
or you just get David Bradley to do it, but he'd probably need to spend half the day in the makeup chair.
Oh, okay, we've answered that question pretty well. I'm surprised, actually. From Steve, who simply says, how many holes are there in a crumpet?
Is it a crumpet or a pikelet?
I think they're two different things. For those that are listening, I don't know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches tall. I think a pikelet is thinner. That's how I've always differentiated them, but I might be absolutely making that up.
Have we got to go and count? Can we just guess?
Just guess. More than 10?
Yeah. There's got to be about... I mean, there's got to be approximately 39, hasn't there?
Yeah.
Do any of our viewers work in a crumpet factory? Can somebody give a definitive answer? I just can't be asked to count them.
How do they put the holes in? That's what I want to know. Is anyone asking these questions?
Do you like crumpets? Do you like a bit of crumpet?
I love a crumpet. Yeah, it's one of the better things you can have. Toasted, obviously. No one's eating them untoasted.
With butter on.
Yeah, and occasionally a bit of Marmite as well. It all seeps into the holes, doesn't it? Nice. Good. Okay, right. Let's move on. Here's another food-related question. This is one that there's no right answer to this. From My Big Mouth, who asks, would you rather your food be too salty or too sweet?
It depends what food it is, doesn't it?
It's a bit of a double negative, though, isn't it? It's too. If it's too anything, it's bad.
What about both then? Because it would cancel each other out then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's actually true. A bit of both. That's the correct answer.
My popcorn I'd have sweet and salty popcorn.
Yeah, so if it was a bit too salty, but it was also a bit too sweet in places, mix them up.
So it'd either have the neutralising effect, or it'd be doubly horrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think they would cancel each other out. I think you've nailed that. Let's move on back to are they football ones? Not particularly, but more football than food. David's 10-year-old son James asks, "This is right up your street, I reckon. You'll give this some thought. Which Premier League team would have the toughest mascot if they had to have a fight?" Now, a lion's pretty good, I would say, first of all.
Do you remember Wolfie when he had a fight with the Three Little Pigs? Bristol City?
No.
Wolfie, the Wolves mascot, a few years, probably about 20-odd years ago, had a scrap with the Three Little Pigs at Ashton Gate away at Bristol City. I think it was a stage-managed thing. But Wolfie was able to take... I mean, they were little. So they weren't...
Pigs, the Bristol City mascot, then?
I don't think so. I think it must have been some kind of advertising kind of PR stunt or whatever. So Wolfie's got the experience. Who else? I mean, is Gunnosaurus still knocking around? Or is he still sulking from last night?
I'd forgotten about him, actually. I was thinking, is Arsenal's mascot something to do with the cannon? Because I was like, well, that's pretty good, isn't it? A weapon. But it is Gunnosaurus, their mascot. I was thinking of Red Devils, Man United, like a devil. Pretty bad, isn't it? Crystal Palace's eagle, I think, could do some damage.
Yeah.
Absolutely could. Well, on the flip side, I've only got one answer, and it's not a Premier League one either. What do you think would be the worst mascot?
I mean, is Boilerman still knocking around down the road?
Yeah, Albion's Boilerman. There's a video of him, wasn't there, the other week, falling over. Yeah. If you're going to get into a fight, being stuck on your back as a boiler is pretty rubbish.
Yeah, and you probably got to wait. You got to wait like 3 days for a British Gas engineer to come round and help you back onto your feet. You know,
nice. Satire. Right, next question, penultimate one. Rob Warner says, "Why don't you have Rob on the podcast more often? He's dead funny and clever. He is a lovely man, isn't he, Rob Warner?"
too bald and he's too old.
That's the criteria. I would like to get Rob on actually fairly soon, or whenever Villa announce their Adidas deal or the new kit or the badge or whatever. Rob Warner is the man to ask about those kind of things. So, Rob, if you're listening, Rob will be on the podcast at some point, I'm sure. But besides your kit knowledge, we'll get you on for your Aston Villa musings as well at some stage. And the final question, Matt, is specifically from Nick, who says, "If Matt had to have the hair of a current Aston Villa player, who would he pick and why?"
Can I have a set piece coach rather than a player?
Is that what you go for? You could pick all of them.
I'd love the McPhee. I'd probably because the younger me fancy myself as a bit of a rocker. Do you know what I mean? I'd probably have it cut a bit shorter, more like Kurt Cobain than the three brothers from Hanson or whatever, which McPhee wears that kind of look of, doesn't he? It'd just be nice. Just to have you seen? Am I imagining this? You know, Despicable Me when Gru's brother arrives and he's got this kind of long blonde mane. Have you seen it?
I don't know. I'm like John Townley. I ain't seen it.
I would like a long blonde mane. So I think Austin McPhee is my style icon.
Okay, fair enough. And that is the show. I mean, we've done a good half an hour or so about football and probably just as much on the non-football related things. Still a little bit delirious, I think, after last night's events of qualifying for the Champions League. Pinch yourself still.
Is that logo going to stay all season?
This one up here? I don't know. Probably not. It's always the competition that we're playing in at the moment, but then when we're in the off season, it shouldn't really be the Premier League either. So it'll probably just be the podcast logo moves into the middle just on its own, I think. That's it then for this one, Matt. Thanks for joining me. It's been a while since you've done one of the Q&As, but it's John's day off, so I thought let him have the day off for a change. This is probably coming out Wednesday evening, so if you've not listened back to our instant reaction after Man City beat Spurs last night, 12,000 of you have on YouTube as of recording and thousands more on audio platforms as well. So if you're not one of those, do go back and listen to that because that was a great episode last night. If you subscribe to Claret and Blue, you will see all of our latest content. We had over 75 new subscribers since last night's episode, which is a big boost in one day. So welcome if you're new. Plenty to go back and catch up on with exclusive interviews and things like that from former players. So thanks for choosing our podcast to watch and listen to. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. Thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring us till the end of the season as well. And as I say, we'll be back with some Crystal Palace build-up later in the week.